And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. And as promised, we're joined by famed defense attorney Mark O'Mara, who's also CNN contributor. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Great, Steve. How you doing? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to talk to you. It's been a while since the aftermath of the Zimmerman case. All right, so you have stirred quite a hornet's nest. And I guess, I don't know, you'll tell me if it was in response to this Florida girl who committed suicide after she was bullied by two girls ages 12 and 14. And then the Florida sheriff started investigating the parents, or of at least one of those girls, and said he may arrest the parents. You wrote a piece on CNN.com, and you talked about writing legislation that would hold parents liable in cases of cyberbullying. Explain your position.
Well, it started because I've got an outreach program that I've had for a few months now, trying to reach out into the school systems and the families and the churches to try and help with juvenile kids going through the system, to try and sort of get a hold of them early on and move them out. So that's always been sort of a focus of mine. But when this case came up, it just sort of really came to the forefront how our kids, the ones that we're raising, the generation that we're raising, just seem to be so desensitized to what they're doing. I mean, in a case like this, it's horrible that for 11 months, those two girls were bullying or stalking this girl online and in person. But almost worse than the 11 months, the way I looked at it, was when the girl posted that about the death, when she says, yes, I know I bullied her, I don't care, and used an even more
right. She used some curse words. Yeah.
It was just, I looked at that and I said, how can a 14-year-old be that desensitized, that uncaring that another child dies and she cares that little? So it really just sort of hit me, and I think we have to start looking to the only place that we can, the family, to try and make them more responsible.
All right, and what would you have? How would you have parents punished? In other words, let's look at a case exactly like this one. How would you have the parents held accountable?
Well, look, throwing the parents in jail is not going to make them better parents. It's not going to cause them to be more in tune with what their children are doing. But if, in fact, a mom and a dad either act in a grossly negligent way or willfully blind about what their kids are doing, then I think they should be held criminally responsible. And here's why. Not just as a knee-jerk reaction, because I don't like those knee-jerk legislations, something happens, somebody gets kidnapped, somebody gets killed, now we have to have a brand new law. That's not my style, but we have this brand new tool called the Internet and social media, and it can be a great tool, and it can be a devastating weapon. And when it gets to the point where it can be a weapon, then parents have to look at it and be responsible. After all, we hold parents responsible if kids get to their guns. We hold parents responsible if kids get to their car and take it out. We even hold parents responsible for getting their kids to school on time. So if we can do that and say, parents, you have an affirmative obligation, then if they fail in that obligation, if they just sit back and ignore Internet presence, particularly after they're put on notice, then why shouldn't we hold them responsible? All
right, we're talking to Mark O'Mara here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Now, let me, and I know you wrote a piece today on your blog at omaralawblog.com, which talks about some of the concerns that people who have responded to your proposal have posted. But when I heard you the other day, I said, okay, I can't wait to get him on because I want to have a good conversation about this. And here's my concern. First of all, you bring up cars and guns and even school to an extent or to a degree are law. In other words, a kid is against the law for a kid to touch a gun. It's against the law for a kid to drive. It's against the law to keep a kid home from school if you want to go take it to that extent as you added to the guns and the car. My question, and then earlier in our conversation, you kind of mixed in how she was bullied a cyber way and non-cyber way. She was stalked on the internet and in regular, good old-fashioned, if you will, bullying. So, you know, I just read a story out of England yesterday or last week was Kick a Ginger Day, where in a town in England they were kicking kids with red hair. My son came home with a note from his middle school that talked about this thing somebody was doing called California Knockout, where you punch kids in the chest. And it's supposed to be some kind of dare or something, warning parents against it and all that. So my question is, God forbid if someone punches a kid in the chest during California Knockout or kicks a ginger and they fall down and bash their head on the sidewalk and die, should the parents be responsible for that as well?
I don't think so. I really don't. And here's the distinction I think we should make. And I understand that those incidents that happen, like you say, just something untoward, where a parent really doesn't have an opportunity to supervise. And I'll give you an example. A kid runs out into the street and gets run over by a car, and it's a tragedy. Great. In that same exact fact pattern, if I were to tell you, Steve, just so you know, that kid who ran into the highway and got run over, their parents, the neighbors came to them half a dozen times in 4 weeks before and said, you got to stop with your kid right on the highway. He's going to get run over. The cops came to that same house and said, you can't let your kid run in the street like that. He's going to get run over. At that point, would you then begin to say to yourself, you know something? Maybe the parents are responsible for that act of the child, which is not in and of itself dangerous. It's not a gun or a car. It's just what kids do. But at a certain point, if the parents refuse, if they are willfully blind or grossly negligent in caring for their child, why shouldn't we hold them responsible? Because after all, when we know that parents don't act a certain way, we actually do hold them responsible a lot. We bring them into the juvenile justice system, or we bring them into the what we call down here DCF, the Department of Children and Families, and we hold them responsible. We put them under court orders. I don't want them in jail. But I do want them under a court order to say, your child for the past 11 months has cyberbullied and personally bullied a child so much so that they caused a death. You are now under a court order to monitor the kid's internet presence or to do away with it, to take courses or classes, to teach yourself to be a parent in the 21st century because you refuse to do it on your own. Look, we all know that the way we look at these cases, back at least when I was growing up, I didn't even have R-rated movies and N-rated movies. My mom and dad had the responsibility to tell me what movie I can go see or not.
No,
now
absolutely.
We have ratings.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad. So have you modified it then to say that pending warnings or a warning or several warnings, as opposed to the parent just didn't know and the kid and the kid? Okay, so you have modified it.
This was going to be. Well, even in the beginning, my first draft was that it was going to be a willful blindness or a grossly negligent standard, and you don't get to that unless you can show, as a prosecutor, you can show something like notice or that you were so intentionally ignorant of what your children are doing that no reasonable person would say that's okay.
Now, can I turn it around in a crazy way? Sure. I mean, it's not normal for a kid to react, a kid with caring parents, a kid to kill himself. A kid to communicate with other kids about killing himself, a kid to plan to kill himself. I mean, that's not a normal reaction. Kids used to get bullied all the time, probably still do. Not that I like it, not that I condone it, for glasses, for being overweight, for being underweight, for not being able to play ball. You name it, kids got bullied when I was growing up. I don't recall anybody killing themselves, but should there be then turn it around to the parents of the bullied kid? Should there be a responsibility on the part of the parents? Because if the parents are aware of the bullying and they don't take extreme measures to make sure that their kid is okay and doesn't kill himself, what culpability do they have?
No, you're absolutely right. And I actually mentioned that a couple of days ago about the same exact thing. And the people I was talking to they gasped about it. Wait a minute, you're going to hold a child gets killed and now you're going to hold the parents responsible of the dead child. I went, look, we have to be realistic. This is not just a child died, someone's got to pay. This is a reality check on us as a society with a brand new tool that we know precious little about how to handle.
Right. And
it's called social media. And if you are acting negligent, Steve, if you have a child and he is being bullied to death online, and you so don't care about his internet presence that you don't get it. Well, why shouldn't you be responsible? Are you responsible if you're not watching your diabetic son's insulin levels? Of course you are. And no one's going to sit back and say, oh, that child had diabetes, so we're not going to hold a parent responsible for not checking blood sugar 3 times a day.
Right.
I'm sorry. Be realistic about what the internet is.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So, how are you proceeding to try to get this into legislation?
I'm on my 3rd draft of the bill right now. It's going to get to the point where I'm happy with it, and those people I'm talking to are happy with it. I'm going to kick it over to a few of the local legislators that I know and
in Florida, correct? Yeah.
In Florida.
Yeah.
And look, I do not intend to put on my resume bill drafter or lawmaker. I'm doing just what I do, but this is something that needs to get on paper and 2 people who can truly discuss it and figure out how we're going to handle a problem that is killing our children.
Great. Listen, Mark, thank you so much. I know you have a deposition coming up. Thank you for your time. We'll talk again. I look forward to it.
Sounds great, Steve.
Bye-bye. Mark O'Mara, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, he was George Zimmerman's attorney, and you could check him out at omaralawblog.com. And watch him on CNN, where he is a CNN contributor on very many legal matters. And this is an interesting situation here. If it's chronic and if the parents have been warned time and time again and their kids bully someone and the bullied kid kills themselves, if the parents of the kid who killed himself isn't negligent themselves, then maybe you could look to the parents. But I think this is a very, very fine line you're walking. What do you say, 877-NEWSMAX, 877-NEWSMAX. Steve Malzberg on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.